Okay. This is Pat McPherson. I'm sitting with Tom Kruskal and Susan Creighton at Tom's home in Sudbury, Mass. And it's August 7th, 2023. We're recording stories from Tom today about his participation in the Marlboro Ale. And the story will be included in the Marlboro Morris Ale Archive, which will reside at the Vermont Folklife Center, currently in Middlebury, Vermont. Everything. We sent you, I know I've spoken to you before, right, Tom, so we're very comfortable. We sent you a list of questions. I don't know if you...
I read through them. Started thinking about some things, but...
Well, we're sort of thinking of talking to you in two different perspectives.
Yeah.
One is your own history with the ale, and starting with, like how and when you started Morris dancing,
right,
and
the outdoor dancing part of it resonated with me as something I have interesting things to say about that.
Okay, and then maybe the second half will be about your work organizing, promoting, and supporting children's teams, and then teen teams, which eventually ended up going to the Marlboro Ale themselves,
yeah,
which...
Quite early, actually.
Quite well, we're going to find out when.
Yeah. I'm not sure I remember the date precisely, but...
Everybody worries
Peter
about
was like
dates.
11 or 12, so that would...
Yeah.
That would... And he's 40 now, so it was about 38 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway,
let's start with you then. So that's a bit of the structure of what we're going to be talking about. And so our first questions are to you about what drew you to Morris dancing and when that was, and what, sort of tell the story from there to your participation in teams, which eventually went to Marlboro.
So I went to Berea Christmas school in 62, 61, something. And I actually went with a couple of my friends who, when they heard I was going, wanted to go. We were into folk music, and I was into folk dancing at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park in high school. So I was doing Israeli, international. I was dancing quite a bit. Went to Berea, and coming from Chicago, we were far away at that point, other than the CDSS people. Anyway, John Ramsey, who was in college in Ames, Iowa, teaching Morris class, which we took. We learned Nutting Girl. I loved it. And I had this sort of folk dance, but it was more international. And somehow the Morris dance spoke to me. And I also heard the early recording of John Kimber playing the concertina that hadn't been released at all, because Becky McLean had which she played at Parlor, and I heard this concertina. I also fell in love with that. So...
was that your first time hearing concertina music?
Yeah.
Oh.
And Morris music.
Yeah.
So I would say I really fell in love with the dancing and the music. I can't remember why. It just... This sort of individual expression of a single dancer that Morris has, it's pretty different than... Well, there is solo dancing, and of course there's sets too, but it's the magic of the individual, and then putting 6 individuals together, being together but not connected physically, just visually, Anyway, that's exciting. So I got back to Chicago, and I wanted to keep doing it, and of course there wasn't anything. So I went to Maxwell Street, which was a big flea market in Chicago. I bought an accordion for $25, and I learned to play Nutting Girl. And my friend Tom Adler, who'd learned the dance. So we danced at my junior prom, Nutting Girl. We didn't really perform a lot, but and I think I taught a workshop in high school somewhere, too, I did Shepherd's Hay. Anyway. So I was into it on a sort of an organizational, musician, promotion level already. I think it's in my nature, that stuff. I've always been a sort of a leadership type person. I was the head of my LRY, youth group in high school and all that stuff. So, and we did a lot of folk dancing in my youth group. I had little tapes and went and taught international at all the LRY youth conferences we did. Anyway.
And what does LRY stand for?
Liberal Religious Youth. It was the
Okay.
Unitarian Youth Group.
Okay, yeah.
It's now called YRUU, I think.
Could you say that again?
YRUU.
Oh.
Youth. It's sort of a joke. So YRUU.
That's kind of a nice acronym, yeah.
Yeah.
RUU.
So then I went to college, and I was going to the Y as a freshman I only went to the Morris classes. Arthur Cornelius was teaching.
So when you went to college, that was
65
Harvard.
for Harvard.
And when you say the Y,
Central Square Y, where the Boston Center was running Wednesday nights, English, and after English there was Morris classes that Arthur taught. And the first year I did just the Morris, and then I got sucked in, and next year I went to English also. I was pretty young. Shag was the next youngest person, so he's 10 years older than me, so I was 16, 17. He was 27. And then, I went to Pinewoods camp that year, and Morris danced in the classes and got into it. And
Who was teaching then?
well, we had
At
Nibs
Pinewoods.
Matthews was there as
Nibs.
part of his 3-year stint, doing Country Dance Society. So he was but Arthur was the main teacher. I did learn a lot so I made a real breakthrough in my Morris dancing at Pinewoods.
cool.
So
This is in the 60s, late 60s.
early mid-60s, so
Yeah.
64. Well, I graduated in 68, so that was 67, 68. So my first year of college must have been 63, 64, something like that, whatever.
Okay, great.
And I was actually, the Pinewoods Morrismen had been formed 1 year before I came. So I was there in the second year of Pinewoods Morrismen. So we performed in camp. So that was dancing outside, but it wasn't real because it was, to my mind, now, because it was sort of a inside track group. It wasn't like dancing in street theater dancing, which is what I've come to love. Then, in between my freshman and sophomore years, I went to England. I had introductions from Nibs Matthews to do stuff. So I got hooked in with the Bows of London City, and I went around with them on their Thames Valley tour, one of their annual tours, going from pub to pub. So I saw the real thing, what I consider to be the real thing. Street theater dancing, going from pubs to pubs, interacting with the crowd, and just a single team, your team. And for me, that became, and still is, my model for what Morris dancing at its best is, which is a little bit contrary to what the ale is, and sort of colors my feelings about the ale to some extent. So, from a personal point of view, the height of Morris dancing, the ale has other purposes for me, and I think for the group, for the movement,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. Because a lot of teams have their own tours that they do every year. They tend to invite a few other teams these days, but not always. Like the Pinewoods Morrismen have our Nantucket tour. That's just us. So I came back from England gung-ho to do this. I convinced Arthur and a few of the other Boston dancers to come do an outdoor tour at Harvard. So I organized the first Harvard tour, 1966, I think, the fall of 66 or 5. I had to get permission from the Harvard Board of Overseers. That whole history is written down somewhere. That's interesting. We danced for the public, and people there knew what Morris dancing was. There was a story about we were processing down Holyoke Center down to one of the houses, and anyway, somewhere someone opened a window and said, "Oh, Morris dancers," and slammed the window. But of course, most people didn't know what we were. And I was trying to start a Harvard team. I had like flyers, but I didn't know how to do it, so nothing came of it. But Dunster House did sponsor, that was the house I was in, Harvard House, did sponsor this Pinewoods tour. So that tour continued on, continuously till this day.
Wow.
And early on, we started inviting other teams, as there weren't other teams when we started, but in the early 70s, and I think the only other teams dancing out that way, I think Jim Morrison's early Morris danced out.
Her?
Jim Morrison's team, which was the Village Morris,
New York City at the
New
time.
York City.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
They weren't. And Jim had been to England and had seen, I think he had the same feeling about it, about what it meant. And I think Albemarle is still a lot that way. Anyway, so I had a stint in California, but Harvard tour kept going. And by the time I was back in 74, there were other teams going. New Cambridge, Ring of Bells in New York. We started inviting teams to the Harvard tour. And it grew and became, in a lot of ways, more than we really wanted to organize. You know, we never did housing for people, but because there was so much available
Right.
in the Boston area. But we ended up doing a dinner and a dance, and then the Marlboro Ale got organized for reasons I'm not quite sure why, but it kind of filled a void that existed that the Harvard tour was experiencing. These teams, the new ones, wanted to dance out, wanted to meet with other teams. They maybe didn't have the background from England that we did, or the same vision of what Morris is supposed to be, or the ability or time to organize things, so they wanted things to come to. So the Ale started, the Harvard tour dwindled, and eventually we've done plenty of Harvard tours by ourselves in recent years, and recently we've invited one or two teams just because it's hard for us to dance the whole time, and for whatever reason. So, but
And the we you're talking about is Pinewoods Morris Men
Sorry.
at this point. Yes,
Yes.
right. Okay. Yep.
That's my team. So.
Yeah, I think that's your team. Right?
I did join
Yeah.
the Jokers at first, the Black Jokers, when I came back in '64 from California.
Oh, okay.
I never started a team in California. It was just, it's hard to start a Morris team in a void, complete void. You need some context, something.
Right.
There was, in '74 when I got back, the Black Jokers were the only Boston area team dancing
So they were pretty
regularly.
early on,
Yeah.
too. Okay.
Maybe Richard Carr, I was doing something.
Richard.
Cartwright.
Okay.
Richard?
Roger.
Rogers. Sorry.
Roger, yes. Right.
Was doing something. They were like meeting on the Cambridge Common, and he started this thing, New Cambridge.
Right.
They went to England like in '76. There was a lot going on. Jokers were the first team. Pinewoods Morris Men started to dance as an actual Morris team, I think, in '76. Shag wanted to start something, so I quit the Jokers and joined that.
Yeah.
So at that point, Pinewoods Morris Men were dancing as what we think of a Morris team being a local group that practices regularly
Right.
and dances out locally some, So,
And up till
yeah.
then, they had been a group that came together and danced at Pinewoods.
At Pinewoods Camp.
Okay, and now
Other
it's more
than the,
Boston area.
I mean, the
based.
Harvard tour was.
Yeah.
It was Pinewoods Morris men who lived in the Boston area.
Right.
But we didn't practice. We only practiced at the Y during our classes. I mean, it was different.
Yeah.
But
So it
I
was
mean,
all
yeah.
connected with CDS Boston
Yeah.
at Pinewoods, bringing together people to
Yeah.
learn Morris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and sword to some. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
At some point, Pinewoods Morris men were invited to the Marlboro Ale.
We went pretty early. I didn't even go with Pinewoods the first time. I might have gone with the Jokers. I don't know. I didn't go to the first ale, I don't think. I wasn't majorly into the ale early on.
What did you
I don't
think
know.
about the ale? Or maybe
It's hard to remember, really.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit colored by. I guess I had more negative than positive feelings about the ale as far as Morris dancing was concerned. It was always a great social event. I always knew a lot of people. For Deborah and I, we'd bring the kids. We always stayed with Andy and somebody at their house. I don't know where they were at. Were they divorced at that point? Andy and Tony? Did we stay with them? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first time we stayed at West Inn, and then they moved over across the street to
Yeah.
the bigger house. And then we started
But so it had always been a social thing. The dancing, I don't know. It was a little bit intense for some teams, not for us. Teams would have huge angst about their show dances, and they would get into big arguments within the teams. I know this from Muddy River and Ring of Bells, it causing lots of stuff, because Deborah was on. Did you dance at the Ale on Muddy River?
Muddy River.
With Muddy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we had tabards.
We have pictures of that. Yeah.
And our dog Daisy was there, and Lily was there. When Windsor was there, I remember going around with Lily as a little baby.
Well, the first time we went, we weren't that really, because it was
Yeah.
75 the first time we went, I think. Or
75 was their wedding, and then 76 was the first actual ale that was not their wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it was 76.
So, the positive things about the Ale, the English teams, and seeing Windsor, those things were great, and have been continued to be. So that's a really important thing for me personally. Seeing other teams dance is good. Performing at the Ale is the my least enjoyable part of it.
As a dancer?
As a dancer, yeah. I don't love, dancing for other Morris teams primarily.
Yeah.
I don't like in public the mass dance where you do one dance and then everyone dances and there's this public. That's not my vision of what street theater is for a Morris team. You don't get that intimate when we dance in Nantucket for the crowd and interact with them, and they all pull out their cell phones and our fool interacts with them, and it's really cool and wonderful. And I never got that at the Ale, and I got it other places, so I didn't. But I certainly saw the value of the Ale. I'm sort of speaking for myself personally, not
That's absolutely fine. Yes.
Not,
that's what we're interested in.
not a bad thing about the Ale
What do you think the value of the ale was then
for others.
for others?
Yeah, no, I think it was incredible opportunity for teams to come and see other dancers. You might say, come and see better dancers, more experienced dancers, to see what Morris dancing could look like and whether they wanted to look like that or not.
That's an important
Like just this year,
distinction.
watching my proteges, Ten Ale, dance at the Ale, which, you could see what a certain kind of Morris dancing could look like. And you could also see, I saw, why I thought it was horrible and arrogant and not good dancing from my point of view, which I told them.
I would love to talk to
They
you more
were-
later about that.
They did it on purpose. I know, because we danced out with them. I had it earlier. And they were going to the Ale to make a statement, this sort of arrogant statement, young buck statement, which was particularly ironic since they had women on the team. And having that sort of macho thing, and then having women dance with them, seems strange to me. And I think it seems strange to others. But there's a lot to it. But I think all that stuff is good, important to see what other groups do. It's great to see the old teams still dancing well, to see all kinds of stuff. I don't know. It is good to see it all. And then the thing we'll talk about more for my kids groups, it's fabulous for them to see adults dancing.
Yeah.
So, what else is good about the Ale? Well, I go. I could not go. I don't have to go.
What's your experience as a musician? How is that different?
My experience for the last 15 years has been, I've been having 3 teams there, and I've always toured with my kids because I felt I needed to. So I was always bouncing around, playing for different teams, and it's hard. So it felt a little schizophrenic.
So you play for numerous Great Meadows teams.
Yeah, I mean, I would
You
play for them.
for
Orion and Pinewoods
and
Morris
for
Ale.
Pinewoods, yeah. Okay.
And, but in the early years, I mean, a bunch of us musicians felt semi-strongly about, or felt there was a place, an important place, for an individual musician to play. And that's that relationship with a team where you adjust your tempo slightly, and you're like one of the dancers when you're an individual musician. And that is not the way Marlboro is in the mass dances, the big dancing. And it's also a way most teams have gone away from. Most teams have gone to multiple musicians. And I think there's lots of reasons why.
Like what?
Older dancers, people want to play,
Yeah.
so they play. And I think the music suffers from that. You get a band sound, and you don't get that kind of more intimate. Well, I mean, like, who was it that played for Toronto and Thames? The Canadian.
Robin Harrison?
No,
No, who was playing for before?
Paul Hannaford.
Paul Hannaford, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he had a reputation for this idiosyncratic Morris, and he played best when he was playing by himself for his teams, because they had this thing. And how does this apply to the Ale? I don't know.
I've been curious, well, as a musician, when you're at the Ale and you're playing for teams, do you need to, think about your participation differently than when you're a dancer? I mean, I guess one of the key points of what you're saying that I've also heard Doug talk about is, as when you're a single musician for a Morris team, your job is to watch the dancers, and you're both simultaneously holding the tempo, but you're also adjusting to where the dancers are in the air and when they're landing, so that you're matching and you're working together. But that would probably be true in any dance situation, whether you're at the Ale or not. Is there anything about being a musician at the Ale in which you have to think about it differently than other kinds of dance outs?
I think it's the venues. I guess for the mass venues, definitely, because of volume. It's hard on a big mass like Newfane or Elliott Street, too. When you are a single musician out there, it's lost a lot. And a lot of teams do that, and it is kind of lost. But when you're out on tour, it's not as bad. And it depends. I mean, I play with Jan Elliott a lot, and what's with these people? It's Monday.
Yeah.
But she and I are totally in sync together, and we do the same thing. And Jan is a master at following what I want to do. That's her goal. So, I mean, so I love it when she plays with me because it just boosts the volume, and but our modern world needs the volume, I guess. But I guess it's not that different at the Ale. It's the same thing. It's a little more of a challenge in some situations.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember watching at Newfane, there was you and Jan were playing for Pinewoods.
Yeah, we played for
maybe?
all those three teams.
Yeah. And I was watching the two of you playing together, and I thought, in all the videos we're getting in the Ale, most of the videos are on the dancing. I'm going to start videoing musicians this time around. And I did just a short, 2-minute video of just focusing on the two of you playing together. And it was just lovely to watch. Just watching both of you really focusing on the dancers, and you could just see you adjusting in the moment and adjusting to each other. And I thought, that's
And we're using,
really nice.
since we're both doing bellows, there's a visual cue,
Yes.
which we see from
Yeah.
each other,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it's harder as a musician to concentrate, I'm guessing, at the Ale when there are so many people around, so many distractions, a lot of people right around you. But that's sort of the nature of, doing your theater in public, right? So
It is, and yeah. And of course the mass dancing with the big band at Marlboro. I mean, I often don't play. I can't really hear myself, and I don't feel like I'm enjoying it or contributing anything. You guys have to sign a contract with us about alcohol and other things, but the Ale let us come back. Well, the two kids that stole the whiskey got kicked out. But now we have tighter controls over the teens than all the other teens that come.
Right.
So that was interesting.